Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to do another rewatch video of This Is Us. This time we're talking about Season 1, Episode 5, The Game Plan, in which we learn about the Pearsons' family love of the Pittsburgh Steelers and how much of a role that played in their lives. This is also the episode where Kevin essentially gives Randall's kids an existential crisis, but we'll get there. And this is also the one where we finally learn of Jack's fate. As usual, I will tell you, this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't watched this episode, I highly recommend that you go and do so. We open this episode with Rebecca as a kid with her parents. Her father is watching football and pretty much ignoring Rebecca. This scene is pretty much contradicted in Season 4, where Rebecca's parents are shown to be quite wealthy. Here, they're very much a middle-class family and really in no position to be sneering at Jack and his upbringing. Also, the father is not played by Tim Matheson. None of this is the fault of this episode, but it is interesting to note. We move ahead in time when Jack and Rebecca are at a bar watching football, or rather, Jack is watching football and ignoring Rebecca. Rebecca gently says that she refuses to be her mother, watching her father watch football while ignoring everything else. So she asks Jack to teach her, and Jack does so. Before you know it, Rebecca is a full-on Pittsburgh Steelers fanatic, yelling at Terry Bradshaw, calling him a bum, and talking about how, or rather what, the team needs to do to win. We settle in at 1980, when Rebecca is 29, roughly a year before the Big Three is born. They're about to have a Super Bowl party at Froggy's. Rebecca is supposed to sing, and they are joined by Miguel and his wife. Though in this scene, that's far from certain, because Miguel and Shelley, which I assume is his wife, is not sure if they are going to be able to find a babysitter. And Rebecca asks the question, why do people have kids? Jack answers that he has no idea. In the present day timeline, we are at Randall and Beth's house. Kevin has pretty much taken up residence, acting like he lives there. Beth and Randall seem a little out of sync. Probably mostly because they're annoyed with Kevin's presence. A couple of things I didn't mention in my prior commentary on episode 4. The ending of that episode saw the first in-person interaction between the adult Kevin and the adult Randall, as well as the first time that Kevin meets William, Randall's biological father. William and Kevin are the ones that are paired together for this episode. This is the most interaction between the two characters, or the first interaction really, and I'm not really sure if we ever see them together again. I don't recall. That's something that we will discover as we continue to do these rewatch episodes. As far as Kevin is concerned, Randall is trying to be diplomatic in asking him when he plans to leave, and Beth, as usual, is just cutting to the chase. When are you gonna go? Kevin says that, he saw this as an opportunity to spend some time with his big brother Randall, or really not big brother because they're the same age, but yeah, anyway, with Randall, Beth, and the girls. He describes how lonely the big hotel he was in, and Randall has an idea. They will take the hotel. Kevin and William can watch the girls, while Beth and Randall will go have a romantic outing together. Beth seems reluctant to leave the girls in the care of two adult males that have never really been around kids. Randall points out that Kevin played a nanny on TV, and Kevin tells him that he actually played an au pair, not really a nanny. Anyway, Randall wins here. They get to have their little getaway, which doesn't quite turn out as planned. When leaving, Beth is all, "Hey, call us if anything happens," and Randall's like, yeah, sure, but don't do that. Don't call us. Leave us alone. We cut to Kate and Toby. Toby's being awoken by Kate, who's serving him breakfast in bed. It's another one of her horrible little concoctions designed to eat healthier, and Toby pretends to be into it, not really doing all that convincing of a job. Now, the funny thing is, I remember Toby being quite obnoxious in this episode, that this was a really bad episode for him, but he's only really bad in one scene. So all in all, their story plays out a lot less cringeworthy than their previous story in episode 4. Toby wants to hang out later, but it's the Super Bowl, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are in it. She wants to watch the Super Bowl by herself, which Toby does not understand. But Toby doesn't push it, at least not in this scene. Back in the past, Rebecca is singing at Froggy's just before the Super Bowl, while Jack watches with a smile on his face. After the song is concluded, a loudmouth jerk is like, "Finally, the song's over, now we can watch the game." And this guy will continue to be a loudmouth jerk through most of the episode. Miguel and Shelley enter the scene with parenting horror stories of how their baby vomited on their other kid, and that kid slapped the baby, and everybody's yelling at each other. And after that little story concludes, and Jack and Shelley go off to get a drink, Rebecca says to Jack, "Promise me that we will never have kids." A comment that will stick in Jack's craw for the next... Well, it's a comment that sticks at least for the rest of this episode. Most of it, anyway. For the record, the Pittsburgh Steelers in this episode are playing the Los Angeles Rams, which completely tracks with reality that firmly puts this episode in 1980. Which also means, and I've already known this, I just haven't said it up to this point, that the big three are my age. And when we come back from the credits, they are losing the game. I already know the outcome, both because I watched the episode, and because I'm looking at the stats right now, as it turns out. But I won't spoil it for you. The game becomes almost secondary to Jack's problem for the rest of this episode. It's an interesting bit of role reversal. Usually when you have this type of story, you have the woman having this problem, haranguing the guy during the Super Bowl. But here, the roles are reversed. Rebecca asks what's wrong. He says nothing. And then he's like, "No, actually there is." Yes, if she meant what she said before about not having kids. And she does. She really doesn't want to have kids. And Jack was cool about that at the beginning. But now that they've gotten older, he kind of wanted to have kids, even after listening to Miguel and Shelley's little horror story. Rebecca wants to change the subject. Jack wants to keep talking about it. And Miguel and Shelley pretty much nope out. After a Randall, Beth, and Kevin scene, which I pretty much already covered, we are again with Toby and Kate at a meeting. They are sitting on opposite sides of the room, and I don't understand why. They are dating, and they aren't mad at each other at this point, so I don't get it. The purpose of this is so that Toby can have his little bit of sending an invitation down through the people, his Super Bowl invite to his own party. It's very clever. It's very well done of Toby. It's almost Jack-like, which should totally appeal to Kate, and it does. She ends up accepting the invite. It doesn't change the fact that it just doesn't really make any sense why they're sitting so far apart, unless they're trying to hide their relationship from the group, but I don't recall ever seeing any indication of that. Cut to Kevin trying to learn his lines for the play. Tess and Annie want to have a Barbie show, and they want Kevin to be the celebrity judge. But Kevin really wants to get off book, which means memorizing all of his lines. He decides on a compromise. So instead, he recruits the girls and William to help him with the play. And they all agree. William a little bit more reluctantly. Kevin ends up asking William if he can read. And I don't know about that one, Kevin. That seems a little bit racist to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like it. At the very least, it's a microaggression. Which, for those of you who don't know what that means, the dictionary definition says, a statement or action or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic group. The moment seems a little bit questionable to me, but anybody watching this, if you have a different take on that, I would certainly welcome your opinion. And yes, for the record, William can read, and he answers the question sounding annoyed and somewhat amused at the same time. Also, Kevin plays this off as a joke, like he was joking, and I'm not totally sure that he was. But before they could start, Annie decides that she needs to pee. And then William realizes, hey, he kinda needs to do so too. So they both take off to handle their business. Randall and Beth arrive at the hotel. Randall is all enthusiastic and really amusing in this scene about all the carnal relations that he wants to have pretty much all over the place. And then Beth spoils the mood by telling him that she's late. As in she's late for her period, meaning she might be pregnant. Way to spoil the mood, Beth. Cut to Toby's Super Bowl party. He has a friend there named Shooter, played by Reggie Watkins, who apparently appeared on this series 3 times, and I don't remember him at all. He apparently had some appearances on Justified, the Walter Goggins starring vehicle that I just started watching because of my video on the unicorn. Things just go round and round around here. I will tell you this, that if I ever have a Super Bowl party, I will not invite Shooter to it. Both Toby and Shooter are pretty aggravating in this scene. Not paying any attention to the game. Shooter is talking about the TV, wondering if it's LCD or whatever. And Toby wants to have a conversation about stories from back in the day, all while Kate is trying to watch the game. He pauses the game mid-play, which annoys Kate, and me for the record, and I'm not even there watching the game. And when Kate objects, he starts the game again, fast forwards it, and oh look, The Steelers have scored a touchdown, and Kate missed it. Kate decides to pretend to be ill and leaves the party. Back in the past timeline, Jack and Rebecca argue, and once again, Miguel and Shelley nope out of the scene. The argument eventually leads to Jack getting into a fight with the loudmouth, because Jack does have a bit of a temper. He's a bit of a hothead, and Rebecca kind of takes that as a sign that they really shouldn't have kids. I don't know if she actually means that or if she's just upset in the moment, but that's what she says. Beth and Randall go to a pharmacy to get a pregnancy test, and Randall bemoans that now they won't be able to go to Charleston after Tess and Annie get older. A plan that Beth was not in on. Cut back to Kevin, who is having a table read of his play. At one point, Tess criticizes Kevin's performance, asking him if that is the way he's going to do it. When Kevin says no, Tess says good. And a little later, when Tess reads her lines, Kevin gets a little snippy, jokingly of course, I think anyway. Oh, look, not so easy, huh? This scene culminates in Annie not quite understanding the adult themes in the play, and leads to questions about life and death, what happens after you die. And Kevin 100% flubs this conversation, eventually leading to, yep, we're all gonna die. Your mom, your dad, everybody. And he basically sends the kids off to have an existential crisis. Good job, Kevin. Jack is with Miguel at the bar. He asks Miguel, when did he know that he would want kids? And Miguel responded, 4 months into the pregnancy. Miguel then asks a very basic question. Is not having kids, or Rebecca not wanting to have kids, a deal breaker for him? He doesn't get a chance to answer because the Steelers win the Super Bowl. Final score, by the way, was 33-19. Not mentioned in the episode, but again, I looked it up. Jack just looks completely miserable in a sea of very happy people celebrating the Super Bowl win. Randall and Beth sit in the bathroom, waiting for the results. Randall says that this is not exactly what he had in mind when he decided to go to the hotel with Beth. He pictured a romantic evening that did not quite end up working out. Their attitudes towards having a child gradually change to more positive as they wait for the results. And Randall asks, who has 2 thumbs and loves his wife? He does. These guys, even when they fight, are adorable. They eventually end up getting the results, and they are not pregnant. Or rather, Beth isn't pregnant. Randall cannot be pregnant. Maybe sometime in the future they'll figure out a way to do that, but for now, it's not possible. William and Kevin have a scene together in the aftermath of his bungling of the conversation of life and death with the girls. William points out that he tends to doubt himself a lot. And after this conversation with William, Kevin has the confidence to go and try and have that conversation again to make up for his blunder. In the past timeline, Jack finds Rebecca and tells her that if it's between having kids or having her, that she would win every time. He tells her the story of how his father, who otherwise wanted nothing to do with him, and everything we've seen of him suggests that he's a giant piece of crap, When he was watching football, Jack was allowed to sit and watch with him, as long as he didn't talk too much and sat on the floor. Jack says that he always envisioned, when he had kids, that he would let them watch the game, and they could talk as loud as they want to and sit anywhere they want to. The couple make up and celebrate the Super Bowl win, and eventually start to make love in the Froggy's bathroom, which leads to the conception of Kate and Kevin. And Kyle, who unfortunately doesn't make it. Kate is later relaying the story to Toby. And is this really something you tell your kids? This is how you tell your kids that they were born? I mean, I guess that's what Rebecca and Jack did. I would think under those circumstances you would make something up, but I guess honesty isn't such a bad thing. Toby goes to Kate's house to find out what the dealio is, and Kate starts to say that football is a tradition within the family. And this is where Kate eventually ends up mentioning the fact that she was conceived in a bathroom at Froggy's. And Jack is actually in this scene the entire time, though we don't know that at the time as Kate is talking. But you can clearly see him throughout the scene. She mentions that in 2006, she restarted the tradition of watching football with her father. And Toby mentions that he seems like a swell guy and that he can't wait to meet him. Kate obliges by going to grab an urn that is sitting on the fireplace. This is where we learn, officially, that Jack is dead in the present day timeline. We don't know how or when he died, but we know Jack's fate, finally. In the final scene of this episode, Kevin goes to talk to the girls to make up with them, to have a second crack at talking about mortality. He brings up the fact that every time he gets a new acting gig, he makes a painting. And this scene to me is almost, I think it is a statement about the series' theory on life as a whole. That life is a painting. And as we go, we get a chance to add to the painting. And then we move on, and other people get to add to the painting. Until everything is indistinguishable from each other. We're all the same colors. We're all part of this painting. And even after we die, we are still a part of it. I don't know if this makes the girls feel any better, but it does serve as a statement for the series as a whole. It's a painting. And everybody that ever lived that we see, even Jack, who we have found out is now deceased in this timeline, is still a part of the painting. I think that this episode is the most remembered for this final scene. The episode as a whole is pretty good. It's not up to par with Kyle or the pool, but these are classic TV episodes. So there's no shame as not being quite on that level. But there's nothing really wrong with the episode itself. It just doesn't quite hit the same emotional highs that the previous episodes do. And that's really all I have to say for this one. Join me next week for the 6th episode of the season, titled Career Day. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are some ways to do it. You can go to Zazzle.com, find the Corman Production Store, buy something from there. You can follow me on Twitter at coreproductions.com. And you can also join my Facebook group by the same name, Corman Productions. And as always, you can like, share, and subscribe to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.